Kia ora whanau, welcome back again for this series of episodes of Partnership with Police, bringing you this awareness program that we are talking about different topics each time and having a different guest on the show. So today I have again a wonderful Phil who is coming back to joining me this program again. We are talking in a different topic today. Let's welcome him together and talk more about today's topic, which will be around hate and extremisms. Yes, that's the topic we will be discovering. Let's discover it together. Phil, how are you today? And thank you for joining me again for another episode and discussing another topic. How are you doing?
Good, Codran. It's always good to be back. And yeah, I'm always impressed being here because you ask all the right questions, hard questions, but good questions. So I'm ready, hopefully.
Well, thank you. So I think we really enjoyed the first conversations when we talked about who are the police and all the functions and rules. And today we have also, you see, we put the same hats, which is beautiful. Again, I think they're just nice there. Yes, let's exchange. You join us. Oh, yeah.
How about this? What audience think?
Here we go. What are your audience?
How's that?
Is it good? Sound
Police
good?
officer.
Yeah. Oh, this is awesome. Thank you again, Aroha, for your time. Really appreciate this opportunity that we talk about those topics and for your colleagues who come before us as well. Phil, today's topic a little bit, it's maybe hard or maybe is really, really crucial in today's world and today's things happening around us, and especially for our communities in New Zealand and in Wellington. So a lot of demands have come around this topic. So I would love to find out more with you. Would love to start about hate crimes and extremism, right? So the question will be like, what is hate crime and hate incidents? So what is that?
So I just want to start, Codrian, by acknowledging that you're right. Look, hate crimes and hate incidents aren't a new thing. They've been around for millennia.
Yeah.
Humans have always joined groups and hated others. I guess what we're seeing in the modern day is people are becoming more polarised. People unnecessarily are following sound bites, whether they see it on social media, whether they see it from certain tribes or groups. And unfortunately, it's affecting all of society and what we call social cohesion. So I just want to preface this by saying this is not a police problem that police can tackle alone. This is all of society coming together. We've learnt the hard way that police can't solve every problem. We're but one little slither of the bigger piece of trying to rectify the issues at hand, and we have a big role and responsibility. But yes, I just want to preface it by saying that. So hate crimes and hate incidents is, there is no statutory definition yet in our legal framework for what is a hate crime or hate incident. We loosely define it from our own definition. It's perceptions based. A hate crime is loosely translated, I guess, or defined as any crime that is committed with a prejudice, wholly or partly, against an enduring characteristic of the victim. So what that means is I commit a crime and it is motivated by my prejudice or hate towards one of your protected characteristics. Now the protected characteristics are 6, so they can be your race or ethnicity, it can be your faith or religion, it can be your age, disability, sexual orientation or gender. Now that is a hate crime. So I commit a crime with a hostility towards one of those protected characteristics. A hate incident is where a criminal offence hasn't occurred, but the incident has occurred, and again, in that incident, there was a prejudice to those 6. So I'll give you a very simple example. So let's say, this is not uncommon. Let's say we're at Woolworths, I don't know, or a shopping market, supermarket. We're trying to find a park. I'll be the culprit, I'll be the bad person, and you're the victim. So I'm trying to find a car park, and you didn't see me, innocently took my car park, right? So hate incident would be I see you taking my park, I get angry and I react and I go, oh, you bloody idiot, you took my park. And then I notice that you're a Syrian. And I say, oh, yeah, you took my park. Oh, and you're a Syrian. Ugh, typical. So that is a hate incident where I haven't committed an offence or a criminal activity, but I have had a prejudice towards your ethnicity by making you belittle you by saying, oh, and you're Syrian, oh, how typical, or go back home, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So just because it isn't a crime, it doesn't mean it doesn't have massive impact on you. And that's what the literature, psychological literature, is telling us, as though it's on the lower spectrum of criminality, even though there's no criminal element, the implications are massive on you. Now, hate crime, that's a hate incident. Hate crime is the same scenario. You take my park, and this time I look at you, and not only do I react to you in that way, I say to you, you bloody idiot, you took my park, and I come over and I go, oh, and you're a Middle Eastern, go back home, and then I punch you because I'm so angry. So now a crime has been committed, I assault, I've punched you, and it's motivated wholly or partly by prejudice towards your ethnicity. Yeah. So now that is a hate crime versus the first one, which is a hate incident. I don't know if that...
Yeah.
It can be a bit complex, but those are the two differentiation points. They all come under hate crime, but that's a hate incident.
So do I understand? Like, crime, it happens when the actions can start happening. And those actions, let's say, if someone say to someone, like, go back to your country, but it could be just incidents, hate. Yeah. But if it's someone who go back to country, then maybe they start pushing or mobilizing others to do some horrific act to push them or put them in a corner and a threat. That will be considered as a hate, right?
Hate crime.
Hate crime.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if it meets a criminal threshold, such as, and what we see in that space is things like assaults, so violence, threats. So even if I say, I'm going to hurt you, or something to that effect, and I hate you because you're
this and that,
of this or that. So if it meets a criminal threshold and there's a prejudice or a hate towards one of your enduring characteristics, it's a hate crime. If there's just no criminal offence has been met, the threshold has been met, but there's still a prejudice, that's an incident. And we as police still have to recognise that, respond to it, and also record it.
Okay.
So we're embarking on a journey since the Royal Commission of Inquiry after March 15th. One of the findings, I think it's point 41 or 42, that police own, which is exactly what we're talking about. Even though there's no legal definition in statute, we've taken upon ourselves to say, actually, we still need to do something. Even though there's no legal criteria, apart from one part, which I've brought with me. So there is one part in legislation, which is part 6, of 131 Human Rights Act. So Section 131 of the Human Rights Act, it's called Inciting Racial Disharmony. Now that, and I'll just read it for you, everyone commits an offence who is liable on conviction to imprisonment for who publishes or distributes written matter which is threatening, abusive or insulting, or broadcasts by means of radio or television words which are threatening, abusive or insulting, or uses in any public place of the Summary Offences Act 1981 or within the hearings of persons in any such place or at any meeting to which the public are invited or have access words which are threatening, abusive or insulting. So we do have this, but that doesn't cut it because there's so many other nuances to it. Yeah. The other piece of legislation we have is Section 918 of the Sentencing Act 2002. So what this gives us is, let's say you've committed a hate crime. So you've said, go back to your home, you Middle Eastern man who I don't like, and I punch you. So you've committed a hate crime of, what is the offence? It's assault. So we will still, if we deem it fit, we will summon you to court for the allegation of assault. Now, in our summary of facts, what we submit to the court is not just an ordinary assault where person A punched person B. There is an aggravating factor that we consider in our summary report, which says that we believe that this punch was motivated by prejudice in the words that were said by person A towards person B, namely, I don't like you because you're from this part of the world, go back. So what that does, instead of just a normal assault, the judge looks at that and gives it some consideration to say this is an aggravating factor in this case. So that part of the sentencing act allows us to put that hate element into what is otherwise a normal summary of facts, a normal, say, assault. So we have that, and we are encouraged to utilise that to make fair to the victim of such an incident.
Awesome. That's a clear answer, but what if there's a questions people, a lot of them ask, let's say, what if I say F word for certain ethnicity or for certain religion? Is that how it will be considered, that one, in this example, let's say?
Again, look, there is parts in legislation that could meet the threshold of threatening behaviour, abusive language. If it meets any of those thresholds, then it could be deemed as a hate crime as opposed to hate incident. So we take it case by case. It depends on the situation, what was said, how it was said, who was the perpetrator, who was the victim. So we take it into full account and then make a determination based on the evidence whether this is a hate crime or hate incident. Now, bearing in mind that our definition is also perceptions based. Now, what that means is if the victim perceives it to be hate motivated, then we will flag it that way in our system. So, I don't know, I'll use an example of, let's say, I'm your neighbour and I'm building a fence. We have a disagreement because we disagree that the fence is built 10 centimetres in your end and you're saying, no, it's 10 centimetres mine. And, you know, neighbourly dispute happens. And let's say you happen to be, I don't know, of Chinese descent, for example. I'm just using a random example. And you report to police what is essentially a neighbourly dispute over a fence, and you say, yes, that's the case. He swore at me, and I believe that he's doing this because I'm Chinese. Even if I, as the other person, have never said anything against you as a Chinese person, but you perceive it to be the hostility is because I'm Chinese, then we will flag it as a hate incident. If there is no crime that has occurred, we still have to flag it. So it's not up to our discretion whether it should be flagged. It's actually perception of the caller or the complainer. Or it could be your friend who's watching this unfold and calls police. You don't call police, somebody else sees it and goes, I believe, police, that this is happening because person A has a prejudice towards this person's enduring characteristic. Then we are obliged, by the current definition that we've assigned to ourselves, to flag it as a hate incident, if it's not a hate crime.
Well, it's just interesting. You know why? What's coming to my mind? Let's say, let's just follow up with this conversation. It's what if someone who have a different language, but they will really struggle to explain the issue, while the one who is, what's the word,
Perpetrator?
Yeah, who can maybe make the person look like lying or look like not telling the truth. But the people are really struggling with the language to tell you that really these people are hating. So how also will deal that kind of scenarios, if you have any examples?
I think that's a good question. I think it applies more generally to any police interaction or calls for service. I mean, I don't think it's just limited to the hate crime space. Look, generally, as we said in the first podcast, we try our best to find an interpreter or find somebody who's capable and willing in the community. We are bound to be objective in our assessments, and when we go to any calls for service, we will hear both sides of the story. We will even talk to witnesses. So if you find yourself in that position, let us know. You know, that there is somebody else who's heard or seen, or ideally somebody independent, but we know that's not always the case. I mean, it may just be a sibling or a family friend or something. But look, if there's a neighbour who has, you know, who's very objective and impartial, then let them know. Say, hey, this person has witnessed this happening. Obviously, with the language barrier, that can put somebody at a disadvantage. But again, rest assured that we will do our best to look at it objectively. And just remember that most cops have a lot of experience on the street.
Yeah.
They've probably seen almost everything. And, you know, the fun part of job is a lot of people lie to us. Or maybe not lie to us, but they either exaggerate or minimise it. So we over time, learn the nuances of potentially human behaviour, how people present.
Yeah.
And so I think we build a little radar to know actually where is the truth, and it should lie somewhere, usually somewhere in the middle sometimes. But we certainly would like to hear both sides and make an informed decision of where this is at. But when it comes to hate crime, it doesn't matter if your English is a lot or a little. If you can tell us that you perceive this is because it's a prejudice towards one of my enduring characteristics, then we will flag it as a hate crime or a hate incident in our system.
Great. Which that would lead me to my second question. It's about the motivations. So what the motivations is for this? What do you think like people to create this kind of hate incidents or hate crimes?
So that is a really good question. And look, I've written it down so I don't forget. There's a lot of motivations, and some of these motivations overlap, but the four main ones I'll focus on is the first one, which is thrill seeking. So usually this is somebody wanting to assert dominance or power randomly at somebody that they don't know usually.
Yeah.
It gives them a quick rush, a rush of adrenaline, and usually they work in groups, and it gives them a sense of importance, random attacks with no relationship. So that's usually the thrill seeker. So, you and I go, hey, we've seen somebody who looks different from us, let's be silly and do something. Say something or create alarm or panic, and we feel that we're so cool that we've done that. That's sort of that thrill seeker mindset. Defensive mindset, motivation, is a perception of a threat from the victim to their turf, their way of life, or their resources. So it's that feeling, and we get a lot in the media, the typical concept of why we bring more refugees when we don't have enough jobs as it is, we don't have enough accommodation, or these migrants coming in. So there's that defensive element where my mindset will lead me to believe that actually migrants are taking my job, or refugees don't belong here, and I therefore act out when I see somebody of that particular faith or that ethnicity. Retaliatory offenders are motivated by retaliation. So that's an act in response to an event that has occurred. So let's say there's an event that occurred that the media have covered, and it involved a group of people with certain underlying characteristics, and people take it out of context and say, these youths from this community are doing this and we need to fight back, and we've seen it, I guess, with our Māori population, where a lot of times, the perception isn't fair that this is a Māori issue, when in fact it may just be some young people who are lost and are doing some silly things. But it's easy to generalise and say, oh, this is a community thing or a religious thing or whatever. And so it's that retaliation. Usually it sees itself with people creating little cliques or little groups, rioting, and that concept of if the government can't protect us, or they don't have trust in the government organisations to deal with it, then we'll take matters into our own hands. So as an example, ram raids. There was a little bit of pushback from certain retailers and groups who then started protesting, and fair enough. But then I started seeing little hints of mindsets that started, or ideas that started saying that actually it's a certain group of people from a certain makeup or demography that are doing this, So the perception started festering, and that wasn't healthy. And I don't think it helped the discourse of actually why are ram raids happening? What is the nuance behind them?
Yeah.
It's easy for us as humans to just find a simple answer, and that must be it, and let's all go and hate upon that group or that individual, whatever it is. And the last one is mission offenders. Now, these are the really extreme ones, and they link into what we will talk about, which is extremism.
Yeah.
So mission offenders are very focused. They focus their lives on certain, usually political, religious ideologies. They usually have organised hate groups, and they are highly unlikely to respond to any calls for resolution or trying to change their mindset, which is another thing that we focus on. Is it's hate crime or hate incidents occurred, that's one thing. We hold people to account, but more importantly is how do we, with our community partners, realign this person's perceptions? Because clearly some of their perceptions are very skewed, they're not accurate, and they're not reflective of what's going on. So a lot of our mahi is prevention. who do we need to talk to? What agencies can help this person, whether it's therapy, whether it's other helpful
different programs,
programs to actually get them to realign their thinking so that there is no harm later done to themselves and others.
Great. Awesome that explaining more about the motivation stuff, which that led me to another question which a lot of people watching this podcast can ask. It's what do people do when they are victims of such a hate crime or hate incidents, or if they are witnessing some of kind of these acts? So what do people do in these cases?
I mean, every case is different and unique. I mean, some cases are very dangerous, some are not so.
Yeah.
I'd say obviously report it when safe to do so. If it's like we said in the first podcast, if it's an emergency critical situation, call 111. Tell us where you are, what's going on. If it's something that's less critical, and let's say you're a witness and you're not in harm's way, record it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're safe to do so, absolutely. I mean, that's irrefutable evidence. People can say what they want, but I guess if it's recorded, then it's there to see.
Absolutely.
If you can intervene, if you think it's safe enough to do so and you're witnessing it unfold, intervention doesn't mean going and getting into a fight with the perpetrator. It could just be taking the victim or the person receiving it to the side and just reassuring them. You know, we've had cases where the victim felt so good, even though it was a really bad situation, but the fact that other people cared and intervened, and actually, in some cases, they told the other person, just, you know, calm down, sir, or ma'am, or whatever it is. We just need you to just calm down and stop. We're safe to do so, but more importantly, just render some reassurance to the person who probably feels, you know, horrible. But it's a horrible feeling. I mean, I've been on the receiving end of it, and it may seem low, again, on the threshold of criminality, but boy, do you go home after the event. Usually it's not when it's transpiring, it's afterwards. You feel, and a lot of people report this to us, you know, they feel like they don't belong.
Yeah.
Do I belong in Aotearoa? Why are people saying this? What is it about me that isn't good enough? And it's easier to go down that path. So we encourage our people to report it, and we have a range of different organisations we can reach out to, especially in the mental health space, because we're not mental health specialists and we're not going to pretend we are, but we do have those connections to help you in your journey on the road of healing, if that's what's required. But yeah, call us, record it if you can, get details, descriptions, and more importantly, render some assistance to that person.
Yeah.
And get others to help you too if you feel unsafe, if you see it unfolding.
No, that's really cool, which is, you mentioned too what I wanted to ask about this other questions about what is the tools available for people to report it, which, like you mentioned, that's just called 111 or 105. But do you guys also have, I think, something in the website as well that people can report those kind of incidents?
So yeah, so if you don't want to call it then and there, because some people need time to just process what happened. If you don't want to go to a police station, then you can actually online, 105, I think it's .gvt.nz. I can supply you with
you
the
can
links.
put it on the
so
screen.
You can do it all online. If you just feel you don't want to talk to anyone, you're not in that space, you can do it all online, report it. The other thing I forgot to mention is Human Rights Commission. Doesn't have to be police. You can go through Human Rights Commission on their website. If it's online, you know, sometimes we get people hating on others online because what they can't do in person, they will do online. A NetSafe, I think it's netsafe.co.nz. NetSafe are another really good facility or resource that can assist in terms of navigating you when it's things that happen to you online, whether it's fraudulent activity, hate online, or or anything like that they can steer more.
Great. So that's really good to know about more in deep about those questions, Phil. And the other one, it's more people ask. There is a lot of now things happening online, which is a lot of people comment against each other, the religions, the race, their issues when it's happening, even internationally. So is that how, if my question will be right, if I'm trying to put the words together, how I frame the questions, how we consider the hate crime or hate incidents online? Is it the same when it's physical or when it's in person? or there's a different definition or different ways that we can consider more about what's happening in online world? How police respond in that?
I think that's another good question. Is again, as I said, what people sometimes don't have the courage to do in person.
Yeah.
That same offender
Mm-hmm.
can hide behind an alias
Right.
and spew hate or prejudice or whatever the case may be. So no, whether it's done in person or online, it's still a hate incident or hate crime. If I threaten you online, I'm doing it digitally. We consider it, just as important. So please report those. Admittedly, in saying that, it is harder for us to identify the person. Obviously, we're only as good as our ability to identify the offender, and there's a lot of cases where people have reported, say, hate incidents or hate crime in the public sphere, so happening physically. But apart from descriptions of this gender and this tall, we don't get anything. And so unfortunately, even though which is still good, it's captured in our system, we have no leads. I mean, we may look at CCTV cameras, but they won't tell us a name or an address or something. So we're only as good as the information we get. So similarly online, the problem we have is a lot of people create avatars, they create fake profiles. And I guess the conundrum for us is we want to know about it because we want to put in our system so that if there's recidivism on a certain page or a certain group, then we have more leverage to deal with that particular group. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is we've got to weigh up, again, we're publicly funded by the taxpayer. So we've got to weigh up the money or the time, risk, cost, benefits. How much time would it cost us to investigate to find who the perpetrator is versus the return on investment? So unfortunately, sometimes we may get 1,000, I'm just using a random number, 1,000 of these reports, and we may only be able to successfully investigate maybe a selection of those, which we know will probably land us to an identity and probably land us with a conviction. And so we will pursue the ones where we feel that there are good lines of inquiry versus, sadly, the ones where somebody is overseas and they've said something. We'll still report them, they'll still be in our system, but I'm just setting the expectation that we will not necessarily pursue every complaint. But in saying that, we do want you to raise the complaint so we get a really realistic sense of what is actually going on. Because what that gives us and allows the government to know is actually how prevalent is prejudice. Whether it's investigated or not is another matter. It's how prevalent is it happening, how common, to whom, on what platform is it happening in the public sphere, is it happening online, and if it is online, on what platform is it happening? And that'll allow us and inform the government to put more resources into that area, you see? So we're only as good as information we get, and that's why we say report. Obviously, we're not saying for people to report things that don't actually happen. But, obviously, truthfulness and reporting is very important.
Which is just, I know the time is going fast, but it's a very important topic. I want to ask you, if you can clarify a little bit between the difference between the people have opinion, disagreement, to put their thoughts about I don't really like about this certain topics about this faith or stuff, etc. Because people are emotional, right? So there's a lot of things we see they use the language of freedom of speech and the hate speech. If it's possible, we give us if you can any clarifications that what we consider hate speech and what consider the balance, which is I know the politicians and everyone now is struggling at this stage to. It's a very big debate in New Zealand. But what do you think in a police level take the serious or we can say tell the people this level of speech, you can call us, this kind of level of speech is basically disagreement or just different opinion. What are your clarification around this?
So that's why I love coming here, because you're so difficult questions. But no, look, I'm happy to give my whakaaro. Look, as you say, it is very complex. I mean, I think society as a whole, internationally, we're grappling with this notion now of. So it comes down to, if I can make it as basic as I can, is the freedom of expression versus somebody else's freedom to be free from discrimination. Now, it's a balancing act, if you know what I mean. Now, there's no hard and fast answers. if you talk about our definition, police definition of hate crime, then people can call us at any level of expression or at any level of perception of hate crime. It doesn't have to meet any threshold. So if I'm talking to you in a conversation and you say something and I feel that's being prejudiced towards my ethnicity or my faith or one of my enduring characteristics, I can call it in. It doesn't have to meet a certain threshold. I guess what we need to do as police, if we're going to hold someone to account, if we're going to deem it as criminal offending, it's going to meet a very high threshold. So it gets to the point where we believe that the freedom of person B, their freedom to be free of discrimination, would outweigh person A's freedom of expression. So for example, I have a freedom to express myself. But if my expression is, I want to say, for example, if I say, Codrian, I disagree with you, your ideas are really bad, and if you continue these ideas, then I will beat you up, okay? I will literally beat you up. So I've got a freedom to express myself, but now I've gone sort of beyond the bounds, now I'm threatening you.
Yeah.
So now your freedom to be free of harm, in this, say, scenario, would outweigh my freedom of expression. Versus a lower level of, Codrian, I understand what your philosophy is, but you know what, I think it's rubbish. I think voiceofaroha is not, I don't mean this, it's not great at all, and you know what, I think you should just find another job, for example.
Yeah.
Right, so something like that, obviously what we call it's awful, but it's lawful.
Yeah.
Okay, where it's completely awful, you don't want to hear that. It's a criticism, I'm not threatening you, I'm not, swearing at you, I'm not, it could be maybe manifested offensive language, but even that meets a very high threshold. So that example there is if you want to call police and say, look, I think this guy doesn't like me because of my ethnicity and I'm doing well in my job and whatever, we will still take that and we will put that in our system. But will that mean that this person gets arrested and goes to court? Probably not. Very unlikely. So again, it's that balancing of one's freedoms versus the others. But what we encourage people is, look, you've got a freedom of expression, express it, but just think of two things. One, how can I do it respectfully? And B, does the other person actually want to hear it? Because I've got to have a willing participant. There's no point in me expressing myself if you're not interested in my thoughts. Yeah. Now, if you come to me and say, Phil, actually, I want to hear your thoughts, and then I conduct it, respectfully, even if it may be critical of you, that's give and take. But if I come to you, hey, I've got something to tell you, I'm not interested, and I want to tell you anyway, that's where we start running into issues. So it's common sense, but sometimes it's not that common. So yes, our job is very hard in terms of weighing up people's freedoms. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no. Look, it's been just amazing, and I think we can talk more about this topic, but I know the time of the episodes and your time and it's coming to end. But I want to leave you with the last questions about what will you leave us with this advice to the people listening to this podcast about what they do, whatever advice you want to give them about this topic or in general. Max,
am I facing you or the...
You can face me here. Well, there's a mic too. Like it's.
No, I think it is a very important topic. I think for many years we sort of shied away from it as a society.
Yeah.
I think with social media and platforms, people are now openly expressing themselves. I think we need to take it a lot more seriously. The second point is, don't diminish it because it doesn't meet a criminal threshold or because somebody wasn't punched or because somebody wasn't spat on. That doesn't need to be that high on the threshold for it to be very impactful. To say somebody go back home, we know that has massive impacts. We're yet to understand exactly why, but we know it does. So where we can, be nice, support one another, I think report it. Don't be shy. If you don't want to report it, confide in someone who you think can have your back and help you. If you don't report it to police, report it to your local community navigator, someone you respect in the community, or go to the Human Rights Commission, go to Citizens Advice Bureau, go to any other person or organisation that you trust. Speak to someone about it. Don't hold it inside. Because we live, in theory, in an inclusive, diverse society. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't meet that threshold. And, we see the sad end of it and some of the victims. So I encourage everyone to report, and where you can, as much as you can, be nice and be respectful.
Great. It's amazing advice. And by that one, we end the show of today. Thank you again. Thank you for so much for joining us. This is for the second time. And I appreciate all the whakaaro, the knowledge and everything you bring with you and your mahi. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kodru.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
See you, marhaba.
See you around. Phil, thank you again. Like you said, this is a second time, or actually more time, third time maybe in the podcast. But I've been we're working with you guys on a lot of other capacity. So in season 5, we really have a traditions we are saying to our guest messages as a book, taking memory from people joining our show. So we would love to. And how this work? We have the guest previously, they left a question. Mm-hmm. So you don't know who's the guest, but we ask you the question. Mm-hmm. And also you have a chance to write a question for the next guest coming in. Yeah? And then also a little bit of reflection. Let's find out the question says, well, the previous guest is saying, who's your hero and what make them your hero?
There's a lot that come to mind, but if I talk personally, so out of the uniform as a person, because I am a person. For me, my hero and somebody, if I had to meet anybody, for me it would be Jesus Christ. And why is my hero? I guess for me it's my faith. More importantly, for me he was an example that I aspire to be like. I'll never be like, but aspire to forgive people, to welcome people. Not just your friends, but people who actually hate you. Mm. We talked about, prejudice and hate crimes and how it feels.
Yeah.
People who conspire to kill you. And to forgive people like that, that is just another level of humanity. And to welcome people who were trodden on, isolated, outcast, to welcome people who need belonging. I think those two qualities alone, forget the religious element, just faith element, I think that is my hero.